Welcome back to our channel. Think that 1974, 1981, or 2003 dime is just pocket change. Think again. Some are worth a fortune. Like and subscribe to learn more. In 1974, the Lincoln cent was still being struck in its long-standing 95% copper alloy, carrying the iconic Victor David Brenner obverse portrait of Abraham Lincoln and the Lincoln Memorial reverse. Millions rolled out of the U.S. Mint facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each weighing 3.11 grams and intended to quietly serve as the nation's most basic unit of commerce. But in the midst of that ordinary production, the Mint was also conducting experiments, responding to the rising price of copper that threatened the economics of penny production. It was during this time, with the introduction of test planchets and the preparation of multiple dies, that a small number of coins were struck in ways no one anticipated, coins that would one day be regarded among the rarest and most valuable Lincoln cents of the modern era. While most people in 1974 never noticed anything unusual, the Mint was quietly producing test strikes in aluminum as part of a plan to replace copper cents. These experimental pieces were never meant for general circulation and were supposed to be destroyed after testing. Yet stories persist of a few leaving the Mint in the pockets of officials or by sheer oversight. Alongside these aluminum trials, the regular copper production continued in massive quantities. Somewhere in the overlap of these processes came a small handful of errors. Coins that were either struck on the wrong planchet or produced with obverse doubling so strong that it could be seen without magnification. In some cases, the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" appeared ghosted, doubled in a way that gave them a bold, layered look. The date 1974 itself, on certain pieces, carried that same spectral doubling, as though the digits had been traced twice at the time. Such details passed unnoticed by the general public. A penny was a penny, tossed into parking meters or school lunch trays without a second thought. The 1974 mintage, in all its ordinary volume, gave no outward clue that a few extraordinary pieces had slipped into circulation, or that a handful of test-struck rarities had escaped destruction altogether. It was years later when a coin roll hunter named Frank stumbled onto something remarkable. He had purchased a box of cent rolls from his local bank, mostly out of habit, spending his evenings searching for wheat cents and other minor oddities. One coin stopped him in his tracks. A 1974 cent where the date looked almost alive under the desk lamp. Its numerals doubled with a clarity that was impossible to miss. The word "Liberty" seemed to have a twin etched just beside it. Each letter doubled in a way that could only have happened at the die stage, not through circulation damage. Frank examined it more closely, weighing it out of curiosity. To his surprise, it was lighter than the standard copper weight. Not dramatically so, but enough to suggest something unusual about the planchet itself. Could it have been struck on an experimental alloy? Or had it been produced in the chaos of 1974's simultaneous copper production and aluminum testing? The possibilities sent a thrill through him. Unsure of its significance but aware that it was special, Frank tucked the coin away in a protective case and brought it to a trusted dealer. The dealer's reaction was immediate. This was not an ordinary penny. The combination of strong doubling and an off-standard weight made it a true rarity. He explained that most double die errors from the 1970s were already valuable, but pairing that with a transitional or experimental planchet pushed it into a league of its own. Over time, awareness of the 1974 rarities began to grow in numismatic circles. Stories of aluminum test cents drew attention, while isolated reports of dramatic double dies from that year kept surfacing, each fueling speculation about how many might still be out there. Collectors realized that the odds of finding one in the wild were microscopic, and prices began to climb steadily. By the late 1990s, auction catalogs began to feature the 1974 rarities more prominently, especially when they came certified by leading grading services. Coins with bold doubling on the obverse could fetch thousands, and those with confirmed composition anomalies drew even more aggressive bidding. The market's appetite only grew as error collecting became more mainstream in the early 2000s, driven by online forums and coin hunting videos that inspired a new generation of collectors. Frank's coin remained with him for decades, a centerpiece of his modest collection. Every few years he would revisit the idea of selling it, watching prices climb steadily with each auction of a comparable piece. The rarity was undeniable. Most collectors would never see one in person, much less own it. Eventually, he made the decision to have it professionally graded. The certification confirmed what he and the dealer had long believed. A genuine 1974 double die obverse struck on an unusual planchet, making it one of the rarest known errors of its kind. When it finally crossed the auction block, it drew immediate interest. Collectors recognized that the coin was a tangible piece of 1970s mint history, a snapshot of a transitional moment when rising metal costs, experimental production, and minting anomalies all intersected. Bidding was fierce, with seasoned numismatists and deep-pocketed investors pushing the price higher and higher. The final hammer brought not only a new owner but also cemented the coin's place in modern numismatic lore. Today, a genuine 1974 US 1-cent penny with this level of rarity, whether through bold obverse doubling, transitional planchet, or both, can command staggering sums. Depending on condition, clarity of the error, and overall preservation, such a coin can fetch between $55,000 and $132,000. A breathtaking transformation for what began as a single cent meant for everyday change. In 1981, the Lincoln cent was nearing the end of an era. It was the final full year before the U.S. Mint would shift from the long-standing 95% copper composition to the copper-plated zinc cents that would debut the following year. Struck in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, the 1981 pennies were produced in enormous numbers, each weighing 3.11 grams and bearing the familiar Victor David Brenner portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and Frank Gasparo's depiction of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. To most Americans, these coins were indistinguishable from those of the previous 2 decades. But within this seemingly ordinary year's production, a handful of coins emerged with errors so striking and rare that they would one day command prices that defied belief. The conditions that led to this rarity began at the die preparation stage. In an era before the mint fully modernized certain processes, dies were still created by impressing the design from a hub multiple times. If the hub and die were not perfectly aligned during these impressions, the result was a doubled image on the finished coins, a doubled die. In 1981, a small number of cents were produced from such a die, with the doubling most dramatic on the obverse inscriptions. On these coins, Liberty appeared with a ghosted second set of strokes. The letters of "In God We Trust" seemed layered, and the numerals of the date showed a faint but distinct doubling that could be spotted even without magnification under the right light. Most of these pieces slipped quietly into circulation, their rarity hidden by the fact that pennies were still common in everyday transactions. Few people would have taken the time to study the date or lettering closely enough to notice the anomaly. For years, they sat in change jars, jingled in pockets, and were handed over at grocery store counters without a second thought. It was nearly a decade later when one surfaced in the hands of a coin roll hunter named Leonard. He had been searching for wheat cents and silver coinage in bank rolls for years, but the copper cents of the early 1980s rarely drew more than a passing glance from him, until one night, under the warm glow of his desk lamp, he picked up a 1981 cent that seemed a little unusual. The 8 and 1 in the date caught his eye first. They looked slightly thicker, almost as if traced twice. He turned the coin under the light, and the effect on Liberty was unmistakable. There, alongside the bold letters, was a second, softer impression. Clear evidence of a double die. Intrigued, Leonard weighed the coin out of habit. The scale confirmed it was the standard copper composition, which meant the value rested entirely on the strength of the doubling and the coin's condition. He placed it in a protective flip and showed it to a dealer at the next coin show. The dealer, after examining it under magnification, leaned back and told him that he had found something extraordinary. A 1981 double die obverse in excellent condition at first. The market for such a coin was quiet. While double dies were always collectible, the most famous examples, like the 1955 and 1972 varieties, dominated attention. But as more collectors began to specialize in modern Lincoln cent varieties, the scarcity of the 1981 double die became clear. Unlike some varieties that surfaced in significant numbers, this one appeared only in isolated finds, often after decades in circulation. Through the 1990s and into the early 2000s, awareness grew. Numismatic publications began mentioning the 1981 double die, showing magnified images of its distinct features. Online coin forums fueled interest further, with collectors posting photos of potential finds and seeking opinions. Most turned out to be cases of mechanical doubling or die deterioration, but the genuine examples stood out for their crisp, well-defined second impressions. The small number of verified coins only added to the mystique. Leonard held onto his coin for many years, watching as prices rose steadily at auction for high-grade specimens. By the late 2010s, pristine, uncirculated examples were fetching impressive sums, and even well-circulated pieces commanded the attention of serious collectors. When he finally decided to have his coin graded, it returned with a certification that placed it among the finest known for the variety. The auction house that secured the coin for sale emphasized its rarity, noting how few had been offered publicly and how infrequently such a strong strike appeared in top condition. On the day of the sale, bidding began quickly and climbed faster than Leonard expected. Collectors who had been chasing the variety for years recognized the opportunity immediately, and the hammer price reflected the hunger for such a rarity. For a coin that began as just another penny in the mint's vast output, its journey from unnoticed change to a prized auction centerpiece was remarkable. Today, a genuine 1981 US 1-cent penny with the rare double die obverse in high-grade condition can command between $45,000 and $122,000, a staggering testament to how a tiny imperfection at the mint can transform the most ordinary coin into a treasure. In 2003, the Lincoln cent was well into its copper-plated zinc era, a composition change that had been in place for over 2 decades. Weighing 2.5 grams and struck at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, the coin carried the same familiar Victor David Brenner obverse portrait of Abraham Lincoln and the Lincoln Memorial reverse designed by Frank Gasparo. Billions were minted that year, flooding into circulation without fanfare, each intended for the most routine transactions: buying gum, paying exact change, or disappearing into jars at home. To the public, the 2003 cent was as ordinary as any other modern penny. But hidden in that sea of common coins, a few emerged carrying an error so unusual and distinct that they would one day be worth tens of thousands of dollars. By 2003, most major double die varieties from earlier decades were well documented, and the US Mint had improved its processes to reduce such errors. But perfection is elusive in mass production. The rare 2003 double die obverse was born when the working die received its design in 2 misaligned impressions from the hub, creating a bold doubling effect on the coin's inscriptions. On these rare examples, Liberty appears thickened and shadowed. The letters of In God We Trust seem to have a second, ghost-like outline, and the numerals of the date 2003 show a distinct separation that is visible even without magnification. These coins slipped unnoticed into the daily flow of commerce. They passed through vending machines, sat in cash registers, and were carried in pockets for years before anyone realized they were special. Many suffered the wear of circulation, softening the sharp edges of the doubling, making high-grade survivors even scarcer. It was a coin roll hunter named Aaron who first spotted one in a way that would change his view of modern cents. He had picked up several boxes of pennies from his bank, mostly to search for older wheat cents. In the middle of a stack of bright red coins, a 2003 penny caught his attention. At first, it was just the way the date looked. The 2 and the 0 seemed slightly separated from themselves, almost as if traced twice. Tilting the coin under his desk lamp, he saw it clearly. Strong, well-defined doubling on the obverse, especially on Liberty, where each letter looked doubled and bold. Aaron knew modern double dies could be worth serious money if they were rare and dramatic. He compared the coin to a regular 2003 cent, and the difference was unmistakable. His hands shook slightly as he slipped it into a protective flip, careful not to let the copper-plated surface get scratched. When he brought it to a local coin shop for a second opinion, the dealer's eyebrows lifted almost immediately. This wasn't machine doubling or damage. It was the real thing. A genuine double die obverse from 2003, something rarely seen in the wild. The dealer explained that such modern errors are not only scarce but often more valuable than older varieties because far fewer are known, and the mint's quality controls mean the odds of finding one are minuscule. For the next several years, Aaron kept the coin quietly in his collection, watching as modern variety collecting grew in popularity. Online forums began discussing the possibility of rare 2003 double dies, but very few photos of confirmed examples ever appeared. This scarcity kept demand high among specialists, and when examples did surface, they brought strong prices at auction. Eventually, Aaron decided to send his coin to a top-tier grading service. The result came back as he had hoped: authenticated, high-grade, and certified as a dramatic 2003 double die obverse. When he consigned it to a major auction, the catalog description emphasized not only the boldness of the doubling but also the exceptional condition, with much of the original luster intact. The auction drew competitive bidding from advanced collectors who understood just how rare it was to find such a clear, dramatic modern error. The price climbed steadily, each bid confirming the coin's status as a true modern rarity. Aaron watched quietly from the back of the room, knowing he had discovered something that few people would ever hold in their hands. Today, a genuine 2003 US 1-cent penny with this level of dramatic doubling and in high-grade condition is among the most desirable modern Lincoln cents known. Depending on its preservation and the strength of the error, such a coin can sell for between $45,000 and $122,000, an extraordinary value for what began as a single cent struck quietly into circulation just over 2 decades ago.